My name is Katt Chong-Gum. My race is Pacific Islander. My ethnicity is Marshallese, and I'm a citizen of the United States of America. For my entire life, I have lived in a small country in the Pacific called the Marshall Islands. But from now on, I will most likely reside in the United States. And I'll explain why. The US is commonly seen as the ideal country with overflowing riches and offers of golden opportunities. The idolization of the United States and the globalization of Western culture affects the entire world, and this is proven daily in the Pacific. Many islanders migrate to the US, or more specifically Hawaii, due to proximity and other factors such as the preconception that America is a country of perfection. And this has a lot to do with the history between the US and the Pacific. In the 18th and 19th centuries, many Pacific islands fell under Japanese controls, including the Marshall Islands. The Japanese rule was harsh for the Marshallese, as it was for other Pacific islanders. The Marshallese had actually feared that they would be targeted by the Japanese soldiers daily. So when the US Army freed the Marshall Islands from Japanese rule in 1944, the Marshallese saw them as their heroes. The former territories of Japan were then economically supported by the US in order to rebuild their economies. According to the International Monetary Fund, much of the economy in the Pacific focuses on agriculture and fishing, while leases on US military bases and assistance from the US government makes up for the majority of outside capital. After liberation from Japan, many Pacific islands fell under American control and became economically and technologically dependent on the US, to the point where their overwhelming reliance on the US has become detrimental to the Pacific nations. It's become clear that Pacific islands are unable to survive without foreign aid because they lack skilled workers, money, resources, and land. Pacific islands are typically quite small. The largest country, Fiji, is only 7,056 square miles, which is only half the size of the state of Hawaii. Pacific islands are subject to many natural disasters, such as storms, typhoons, earthquakes, and king tides. Rising sea levels ruin the drinking water and the soil fertility of the islands, which prevents agriculture. Without arable soil, the large populations cramped in these small countries are unable to eat without the support of US imports. The tides also cause erosion and decrease the size of the already tiny islands. Many islands also suffer through floods that tear apart our homes. Houses and schools will be flooded with sewage once every month. In the Marshall Islands, only 3 miles away from my house, a graveyard was recently washed away by the rising tides. 10 rows of graves were washed away. Now, this horrific event has made me and the rest of the Pacific Island population realize that we cannot consider anything safe or permanent in the Pacific. We realize that it can all be taken away within just 1 hour. Because of this, many are forced to flee to the US in order to ensure the futures of their families. Besides environmental push factors, islanders move to the US due to economic pull factors, such as higher education and jobs. In many Pacific Island countries, there are high rates of unemployment. In the Marshall Islands, 36% of the population is unemployed. The severe lack of economic opportunities and these high unemployment rates in the Pacific in face of overpopulation further pushes Pacific nations into poverty. Now, due to the lack of jobs, many Pacific Islanders migrate to other countries, including the US. The 2000 census recorded over 900,000 Pacific Islanders in the US. In 2010, there are 1.2 million Pacific Islanders. The Pacific Islander population is one of the fastest growing population groups in the US in the last decade. This is referred to as brain drain. Brain drain results in a negative outcome for the Pacific Islands, leaving them underdeveloped because they can no longer support themselves without skilled workers. But the problems don't stop there. When Marshallese come to the US, many experience culture shock. Back home, we are taught that eye contact is a sign of disrespect. In the US, eye contact is expected during a conversation. the Marshall Islands, children and students are told silence is respectful. In the US, we are told to participate in class discussions. There is a preconception that Marshallese students do not value education, but really, we just show respect differently. We show respect with silence. We show respect with little nods. We show respect with downcast eyes. But because of the differences between American and Marshallese culture, Marshallese students are thought to be disrespectful. Many young Marshallese students receive bad grades in American schools, which factors into the low graduation rates. Another cultural difference is how important we see education is. Many Marshallese have never received any formal education throughout their entire lives. Many Marshallese adults have never gone to high school, much less college. Their lack of formal education makes it increasingly difficult for Pacific nations to have a skilled workforce. And with the rapidly increasing populations, the need for improved higher education in the Pacific has become evident. So when Marshallese adults without high school diplomas or college degrees come to the US in search of jobs, they can only receive low-wage jobs. Their lack of formal education also causes them to be unable to see the necessity of education. For example, if a student's family needed help, then the student would drop out of school and go find a job. Because in Marshallese culture, the group is more important than the individual. Pacific Islanders have the highest high school dropout rates at 27%. They also have the lowest graduation rate. The 4-year graduation rate for Pacific Islanders is only 51.4%. That's the lowest graduation rate any population group in the US has ever received. You see, culture is a big part of who we are. It makes up our identity. The American culture is very diverse, as is its population, but many people of different ethnicities and cultures come to the US only to adopt the American lifestyle rather than preserve their own culture. Due to the popularity of Western culture, many cultures of the Pacific are dying out, including the Marshallese culture. Less and less children are taught their native language. Less and less children know our word of greeting, Yagwe, which means you are a rainbow. Less and less children are taught that we don't have a word for goodbye because we're always close together. In an attempt to preserve their dying culture in a foreign country such as the US, Marshallese honor family and community. I mentioned before that the group takes precedence over the individual. And this shows by how every event and holiday is spent with entire communities of Marshallese instead of just within one family. We celebrate the first birthday of an infant as a community. We dance on Christmas as a community. We sing our national anthem on Constitution Day as a community. In face of the overhanging American culture and society, Marshallese and other Pacific Islanders and other minorities as well have to fight daily to preserve their culture. Pacific Islanders face problems wherever we go. In the US, we face being the minority, cultural loss, low wages, and prejudice. In the Pacific, we face overpopulation, poverty, unemployment, and meager education. I am not arguing that Pacific Islanders should choose the US. I am saying that Pacific Islanders need to establish their place in this world. Our countries are disappearing, but if we come to the US, our lands, our traditions, our cultures, our languages may very well be forgotten as we assimilate into American culture. Many have chosen to put all their hope in their perception of America's perfection without thought of their past or culture. Others have chosen to stay in the Pacific without thought of the future. We, the people of the Pacific, must choose the best course of action that will sustain not only our futures, but also our past. Thank you.